Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. For years, Pakistan has been screaming that Afghan soil is being used to export terror. For years, Pakistan has been burying its soldiers because of terrorists slipping across the borders. For years, the world stayed silent, and India stood beside Kabul, mocking Pakistan's warnings. But tonight, terror has knocked on America's own fortified door. Well, on the eve of Thanksgiving, in the heart of Washington, D.C., two armed members of the National Guard were ambushed and shot at point-blank range. The attacker? He was an Afghan. So tonight, I ask the world directly, when terror bleeds on Pakistani soil, it is allegations. When terror reaches Washington, it becomes global emergency. Will the world remain silent now, or finally accept the truth Pakistan has carried for decades? So what exactly happened? According to US security briefings, the two National Guard troops were deployed on routine high-visibility patrol near federal zones close to the White House perimeter. The attacker approached on foot, waited to close the distance, drew a handgun, and executed a classic ambush-style close-range attack. Both soldiers were struck multiple times and collapsed on the spot. Emergency medical units rushed them to trauma centers in critical condition. Within seconds, nearby guard personnel and law enforcement units returned fire, wounded the attacker, disarmed him, and took him into custody alive. Well, for the most militarized capital on earth, this was just a crime. For the most militarized capital on earth, this was not just a crime. This was a strategic embarrassment. The attacker's profile. Pay attention to this. The attacker has now been officially identified as Rahmanullah Lakhanwal, a 29-year-old Afghan national. He entered the United States in September 2021 during the chaotic Afghanistan withdrawal conducted under the administration of Joe Biden. Well, this was the exact period when mass emergency airlifts were conducted with compressed, politically rushed vetting procedures. From a strict military intelligence perspective, this is not an accident. This is a direct manifestation of a failed evacuation and screening policy. Security and tactical assessment. It is evident this was not just a random street shooting. This was target selection, proximity killing, and immediate extraction failure. The textbook pattern of a lone actor urban ambush. No second shooter detected. No escape route required. The objective was shock media impact and psychological penetration of the US capital. Well, this is the same asymmetric warfare model Pakistan has been fighting for 20 years. The difference? Pakistan fights it daily without global applause. Coming to Trump's explosive statement. Following the attack, President Donald Trump, he issued a furious statement. He called the attack an act of evil, an act of hatred, and an act of terror. Trump directly blamed the 2021 Afghan evacuation policies and declared that the attacker's presence is proof of catastrophic immigration failures. He announced total re-verification of Afghan entrance, aggressive deportation policy, and the steepest possible punishment for the attacker. This was not just security language. This was political retaliation through force policy. My great fellow Americans, earlier today on the eve of Thanksgiving holiday, two members of the National Guard serving in Washington, D.C. were shot at point-blank range in a monstrous ambush-style attack just steps away from the White House. This heinous assault was an act of evil, an act of hatred, and an act of terror. It was a crime against our entire nation. It was a crime against humanity. As President of the United States, I am determined to ensure that the animal that the animal who perpetrated this atrocity pays the steepest possible price. I can report tonight that based on the best available information, the Department of Homeland Security is confident that the suspect in custody is a foreigner who entered our country from Afghanistan, a hellhole on earth. He was flown in by the Biden administration in September 2021 on those infamous flights that everybody was talking about. Nobody knew who was coming in. Nobody knew anything about it. His status was extended under legislation signed by President Biden, a disastrous president, the worst in the history of our country. This attack underscores the single greatest national security threat facing our nation. The last administration let in 20 million unknown and unvetted foreigners from all over the world, from places that you don't even want to know about. No country can tolerate such a risk to our very own survival. We must now re-examine every single alien who entered our country from Afghanistan under Biden, and we must take all necessary measures to ensure the removal of any alien from any country who does not belong here or add benefit to our country. If they can't love our country, we don't want them. America will never bend and never yield in the face of terror. We don't want them. America will never bend and never yield in the face of terror. My great fellow Americans, earlier today on the eve of the Thanksgiving holiday, hellhole.
A hellhole.
Alien.
Of any alien.
Animal.
Animal.
These are the words for Afghanistan. How do anti-Pak lobbies using Afghan nationalism respond to that? The next step, 500 additional National Guard deployed. Within hours, the Pentagon ordered the deployment of 500 additional National Guard soldiers across Washington, D.C.
And I will ask the Secretary of the Army to the National Guard to add 500 additional troops, National Guardsmen, to Washington, D.C.
These forces were positioned at federal buildings, diplomatic zones, transit corridors, power and communications infrastructure. Well, the U.S. Capitol has now moved into a high-threat internal security posture, a status usually reserved for wartime scenarios or confirmed terror networks. And now, what the U.S. Defense Secretary said. He confirmed that the attack is being treated as a national security incident. Intelligence coordination has been intensified. Rapid reaction troops have been placed on rotational alert. Federal military joint protection has been activated. His message between the lines was blunt. A single attacker exposed a gap that should never exist in a superpower's capital. Coming to the new Washington, D.C. immigration rules, especially for the Afghans. In the aftermath, U.S. authorities have frozen Afghan immigration processing within Washington, D.C. Secondly, initiated rescreening of previously approved parole cases. Thirdly, expanded detention and removal authority for legal discrepancies. Well, this is a direct rollback of post-2021 Afghan resettlement policy. What Pakistan demanded for years is now being enforced only after American blood was spilled. And now my own strategic view. From a Pakistani military security lens, this incident confirms three facts that Islamabad has repeated at every international forum. First, terror born in unstable Afghan corridors does not respect borders. Second, political evacuations without intelligence discipline create long-term internal threats. Third, selective moral outrage breeds selective insecurity. Pakistan absorbed this storm for 2 decades. Now the storm has reached Washington, D.C. Coming to the conclusion, 2 armed soldiers shot in the heart of the world's most protected capital, a superpower scrambling its internal defenses, and a global system once again forced to confront the monster it once ignored when Pakistan warned about it. Well, the question is no longer whether Pakistan was right or wrong. The question is, how many capitals must bleed before the world listens? This is your very own Fareeha Farrukh. Keep watching 360 Digital English. Take care. Allah Hafiz.